It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's my Millsy, hometown commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. As always, the deck is going to be down in the description below for you, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links down in the description. I'd really appreciate it. But today, we're going to finish up our Marvel Secret Lair commanders and take a look at Iron Man Titan of Innovation. Before we talk about Iron Man, I kind of want to use this video since it's the last one of the week. And by the time I've gotten the point to record this one, unfortunately, the Marvel Secret Lair is already sold out, which to me is just a future indication of the problem that Secret Lairs have now, which is that they're not being printed enough, and it's causing massive demand on both people who would feel missed out on the front end and driven up price on the back end. I think most of us agree that this is not the system that Wizards should have chosen. I was all for the system we had before, where everything was made to order. You waited a little bit longer, but you got what you wanted. I hope that we can eventually go back to that, but at the moment, it seems like this current Secret Lair model is to stay. If you're looking for these Marvel cards, remember there are other options. There are proxy sellers out there for you if you want to play that type of game. I think for a lot of players, proxies are a viable option, and they're well actively out there. There's plenty of sites selling them, and I think at this point, if you can't find a card, it should be an option you keep open for yourself. But today we're talking about Iron Man Titan of Innovation, a 5-mana Izzet human hero with flying and haste that whenever he attacks, we get to create a treasure. Then we could sacrifice a non-creature artifact. If we do, we could search our library for an artifact card with mana value 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value, or the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put on the battlefield tapped. I think this is an interesting ability, right? It's kind of a birthing pod type ability for artifacts. And I think there's a lot of ways you can take this. At the end of the day, it's always easy to come up with harebrained ideas for what to do with this. And I think the community will do a ton of that. I kind of take my shot at it. I'll admit I'm not in love with the shot I took at it, but I took a shot at it. That's what I'm going to present to you today. And I hope you enjoy the ideas that I came up with for it. And I can't wait to see more of this once it gets an EDH rec to see what other people have done as well. But as far as the artifacts we're going to find, the first thing that came to me when it came to the idea of being able to birthing pod to certain things, it was the bobbleheads. The bobbleheads from Fallout are all artifacts that tap for a mana of any color, but all of them have abilities that scale with the amount of the bobbleheads you have, and there's 7 of them. I felt like this was a fun way to kind of get the ideal scenario where you have all of them together, and then they all have some pretty interesting abilities. A Jody bobblehead prevents up to X target creatures you control from being blocked except by creatures with haste. So a little bit of pseudo unblockability. Charisma bobblehead makes some tokens. That's kind of interesting. Brass's Tunnel Grinder kind of sits here in the middle because if we sacrifice a non-token artifact or we do other things, we can potentially descend enough to flip Brass's Tunnel Grinder over, where we can start discovering into more spells as we cast our things. Endurance Bobblehead can give creatures +1/+1 indestructible in a turn. Intelligence Bobblehead can draw some cards. I have Esoteric Duplicator here in the middle because I think it's a really good one. Whenever you sack it or another artifact, you can pay 2, and if you do at the beginning of your next end step, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. This is really nice because it'll allow you to keep the thing, kind of, right, that you sacrificed, and still get the thing that you want for the extra mana. It's going to also allow you to potentially get enough copies of things, or get copies back, get multiple copies of an artifact, as we have ways to get artifacts back from our graveyard, and I think that's important as well. Luck will make you roll so many dice and get treasures for each even result. Perception lets you look at the top X cards of your library, X number of bobbleheads, and you can cast a spell from among them with mana value 3 or less, which is a great ability and easy for us to do. And then Strength Bobblehead can put counters on a creature where that's number of bobbleheads. Again, great to soup up Iron Man since he's already in the air. You know you're going to be able to use him to get damage in to our opponents. Other than that, I think the key thing in the deck is finding these key pieces that work along with what Iron Man wants to do so we can do this more effectively. Duretti says that we can sacrifice an artifact, and if we do, return target artifact from our graveyard back to the battlefield. I really like this in conjunction with Iron Man because Iron Man makes that treasure, meaning that we can then sack that treasure and get the thing that we either just sacrificed this turn back, or get the thing that on a past turn we sacrificed and bring it back. And then if we give him up to his emblem, Anytime we sack an artifact, we're going to bring it back. Now, this won't work for the treasure tokens, obviously, because they're never going to hit the graveyard. But for everything else, we'll be able to get them back and make sure that they stick around for us. Tezzeret's a pretty fun one, allowing us to untap artifacts, but we can -X to search for an artifact with mana value X or less and put it on the battlefield. This is nice because we can either go get an artifact to sacrifice to Iron Man to do that pot effect, or we can just go get the key things we need, and then the -5 just turns all of our artifacts into creatures, which can allow all of those treasure tokens and all of those other things we're getting into creatures for a big kind of alpha strike. A Candy Manufacturer plays really well with that Tezzeret, because anytime we make that treasure, we're going to make a clue and a food instead, just stacking up those tokens, and can lead to those Cyberdrive Awakeners and those Rise and Shines, where we can turn all of those into creatures and get a big alpha strike on our opponents. Auton Soldier looks kind of fun because Auton Soldier can become a copy of Iron Man, getting us more of this ability and or just more treasures. I think there's still a world where we can use the treasures to our benefit and have a win con with the treasures. And so Auton Soldier kind of does both. Gives us more opportunity to do the pod and more opportunity to get the treasures. Emery's a great way to play the things that we sacrifice to get them back. So when Emery comes in, we're going to mill 4, but we can tap it to choose an artifact in our graveyard and cast it. So if we sacrifice that artifact with Iron Man, we can tap Emery, pick the thing that we sacrificed and get it back, allowing us to either use it again for the purpose of potting again, or just get it back if we really care about it. Ketis seems like a ton of fun, allowing Iron Man to deal damage to our opponents and deal them to each opponent. Since non-combat damage isn't considered for commander damage, Iron Man can't unfortunately nuke the table here that way. But I think the important part is that we can be pressuring all of our opponents as Iron Man's attacking through the sky, and we can also focus on ways to even grow Iron Man, right, through the process of that. I think Urza feels like a great side character here for Iron Man to help out with making a construct when it comes in, allowing all of our artifacts to tap for a blue, so even those treasures can tap for a blue, and then using his bottom ability, which is so great, to just start casting things for free off the top of our library for 5 mana if we hit a non-land card. Urza, I think, just helps us with allowing our treasures to tap for mana instead of sacrificing, just so that way we can build up the treasures for something like mechanized production over there on the right, which we would enchant an artifact we control. So we're going to put it on a treasure. In the beginning of our upkeep, we make a copy of that enchanted artifact, and then if we control 8 or more artifacts with the same name, we win the game. So we to potentially win the game with just treasures. And then you have something like Hexplate Wallbreaker, which can just give Iron Man the opportunity to have multiple combats, multiple treasures, multiple pod style effects. I know I'm kind of breezing through this, but the truth is, I think what matters with Iron Man more isn't this treasure sub-synergy. It's kind of what you want to do with the pod effect. And like I said, I picked the bobbleheads and some other like 3 mana artifacts, but there's a lot of things you can do. And I wanted to show off one combo that you can do in the deck. I think artifact decks are very good most of the time at piecing together intricate combos that can really take over a game. And with Iron Man, we do have the option for a infinite mana combo, and you can do that for a lot of things. So the combo is Pilipala and Grand Architect. Pilipala says for 2 mana, you can untap it to add a mana of any color to your mana pool. And Grand Architect says you can tap an untapped blue creature you control to add double colorless and spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate ability of artifacts. You may say, well, Pilipala isn't a blue card. Well, you can. With Grand Architect, for 1 blue mana, you could turn Pilipala into a blue creature, and then you would tap it with Grand Architect's ability, making 2 colorless mana. You would untap Pilipala, right, to make a mana of any color, and now we have this loop where we've netted a mana of any color every time we're tapping and untapping. You can do a lot of things with this. There's a lot of ways to take advantage of this. This could work with Urza, right, to go through our entire library. You can also use something like Walking Ballista, which you can pay mana to put a counter on it, remove a counter on it to deal damage to a target. You can machine gun down all your opponents with this infinite mana. There's plenty of ways to take advantage of this specific infinite mana combo. Ballista is just the one I wanted to show off as an example, but I think there's a lot of ways you can take this infinite mana combo and project it across your deck to do things with it. But I've said it on the show all the time, and I'll say it again: no deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Iron Man. I think I'd have a lot to learn in testing on this deck of just, does it have the pieces it needs to stay consistent? And I think we would learn a lot from that in testing. As far as cards to consider when we go into testing, we're just taking a look at different ideas of ways to support this strategy, and do we need more of it? We have a couple things that deal damage when artifacts come in, but do we need another one and something like an ingenious artillerist? Could we bring in one or two more of these pieces to deal more damage when those treasures get made and those artifacts come in off the birthing pod? Do we want artifact engines like Kappa Cannoneer that can make itself unblockable, get bigger return, become a secondary threat besides Iron Man that our opponent have to deal with? Or do we want to do something like Karn Living Legacy that when you get his emblem off, you can tap artifacts to deal a damage to any target? We could pair this with things like Shojun or Gear Per Aether Grid to kind of get this tap and deal damage sub synergy if we wanted to do that. I think there's a lot of ways we can take Iron Man, and that means that we kind of have to take our pick and run down that lane. And this is, where I think we would learn a lot in testing when we run down those lanes. But let's get into playtest number 1. Human a 2-lander with a Soaring and a Charisma bobblehead with the Enthused Mechanaut, Duretti, and Crystal Skull, which can let us look at the top card of our library at any time and play historic lands and historic spells from the top of our library. And we get to add a blue for it. So not a bad opening start. I mean, we can obviously get into bobblehead for our red for Iron Man, but I think we've got a great start here on having a lot of things we'd want. We'll go Island into Soaring. Here's Manifold Key. Manifold Key is kind of interesting in this deck because it can untap artifacts, but I think really Manifold Key is a good one to sacrifice to start the chain to get us up right to those bobbleheads as we get the party going. So turn 2, I think we get the bobblehead down, so that way we have the red right for Iron Man. So now we have that process started. We have 2 mana left. I don't really see anything to do with it since one of those is going to be... Well, no, I guess we would have red, blue for the Mechanaut right here. 1, 2, and 3 for that, and then red and a blue for the Mechanaut. So we can reduce artifacts a little bit, right? We'll make sure we have that process. Aether Hub is a signpost of having some more energy subs options in the deck. There's a lot of great energy cards in Isn't. We could do that as an option as well. I think Aether Hub works as an option for that. I can't remember how much energy I have in the deck, so Aether Hub might be a little bit odd there, but we'll save its mana of any color from we truly need it. We have enough for Iron Man. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, it's 1 less because of Mechanaut. And so what I would do is go to combat and attack. Of course, we're going to make that treasure. And then I would go ahead and sack the Manifold Key. We're just going to go try and find something with 2 in our deck that can bring us big value. Ichor Wellspring feels good, right? Whenever it comes in and whenever it leaves, you can draw a card. That'll get us both a card right coming in and a card going out. We could get something like Talisman of Creativity if we wanted the value. But I think I want something like Ichor Wellspring because then I can sacrifice it next turn, right, to go find another bobblehead. Remember that when the Wellspring comes in, it's going to draw us a card. Emery's great, right? This is going to, again, allow us to keep getting Wellspring back, right? Keep sacrificing it to find our bobbleheads. I think this is where this bobblehead game plan probably starts taking off to good value. So turn 4 here. Get the Buried Ruin down. And obviously we want to sacrifice the Wellspring this turn. Emery costs 1 less for each artifact we control, so it's just a single blue, which is there on the bobblehead. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mechanized production on the treasure, right? Start that as an option. Sorry, when Emery comes in, we're going to mill 4. So 1 bobblehead in the graveyard. We have a Sensei's Divining Top, a way to make sure we see, the top card of our library and enable that way. And then Tezzeret. So Tezzeret is in our graveyard, unfortunately. We do have some ways to get things back, but we'll have to dig into that in a little bit. But so now we, I think, have a good setup there. We're going to go to combat, make another treasure, sacrifice that Wellspring, right? Which is going to draw us a card, but because we're already in the process of resolving the ability, that's going to go off first. I like the idea of the Intelligence bobblehead to start drawing some cards. We could do the Esoteric Duplicator to basically start making sure that we can start getting extra copies of this Wellspring as it's coming in and out. I think that makes a ton of sense. Just so that way we're not having to pay too much. 2, 3, 4. I don't think I have enough. Let's see. It was 1, 2, 3, 4 to put down the mechanized production, a single blue to put down Emery, So I think I have 2 mana, which should be enough to replay the Wellspring. Sorry, Wellspring would have drawn us a card, or sorry, when it left the battlefield too. So now we have the Wellspring back, right? Ready to load up the Iron Man. We've got a Felwar Stone, which is another way to load it up. And now next turn we can pay the 2 mana so that when Wellspring leaves, we make a copy of it at the end of turn. We have right now we always have another artifact that we can use to keep feeding Iron Man. We do have the option now with Buried Ruin to sacrifice it to bring an artifact back if something really out of hand happens. But I think here, right, we make another treasure. We're still working our way up on the treasures, but okay, I guess it would have probably made sense to get the bobblehead that cares about treasures now that we have mechanized production set up. But I'm thinking 6 for Auton Soldier, coming in, copying Iron Man, and then that would have only been 5, but copying Iron Man. Now that the nice part is it becomes copy of Iron Man. It isn't legendary. It has Myriad, so it's going to actually attack each player with an Iron Man. But we're only going to get 2 treasures because that Iron Man ability is an attack trigger. So each of these will get it. But unfortunately, the copies of the Myriad of the Iron Man won't get it. So now we'll have 2 copies of the Iron Man on the stack. I think I'll just get rid of the Mechanaut and then the Ichor Wellspring, and we will have enough to pay the 2. So we will pay the 2. We're going to go looking. Again, I think we want the bobblehead that... We'll do the one that gets counters, and then we'll do the bobblehead that cares about the treasures, just so that way next turn we can get some more treasures down, work our way towards this... work our way towards the win there for the treasures, right, with mechanized production. And we paid the 2, so we should get a copy of Ichor Wellspring on end step. So Ichor Wellspring leaving would draw us a card, and then the copy that would come in would draw us a card as well. So we've got lots of value added. Now remember that we can use Emery to start getting things back if we want to get something like that Endurance bobblehead back to have more bobbleheads for their abilities. But I think you could see we're starting to get this bobblehead thing set up. At the start of our turn, we would make a treasure. And we're in great shape. I mean, we're just a couple treasures away from having the game here. I think on this turn, I would try to get our more bobbleheads online. You know, use Iron Man to make sure that we have the value down. So I would tap Emery, you know, bring a Wellspring back. That's going to draw us a card. And then we could play the Manufacturer. That would give us an option to make some more artifacts. You know, for that, I think Duretti might make sense to be able to bring something back. Caddis, you know, might make sense here to get some extra damage, right? But we would just go to combat, you know, attack, make the myriad of them attacking. Kill both the Wellsprings. Again, I think we have enough mana to get that Wellspring back. But again, you just go to get the bobblehead. Get another bobblehead. And they come in tapped, which is okay. The question is, Luck Bobblehead is 1 mana to roll X, which I think we'll have enough even if we pay for this Wellspring. So that's what, 1, 2, 3. You roll it where X is the number of bobbleheads you control, so that's 5. So let's roll 1, 4, 6, 2, 1. We get a treasure for each even result. 1, 4, 6, 2, 1. So 3, right? So now we have that, you know, treasure victory online. And now, even if an opponent gets rid of mechanized production, we still have a ton of treasures. We have a ton of mana, and we can continue pouring our mana into getting through the deck. The other nice part about Iron Man is, remember that a part of that infinite combo mana was Pillapalla, which was an artifact, and then that grand other card that wasn't. So if we ever see the grand card, we can actually use Iron Man to go get Pillapalla and have that part of the concept ready. So I think there is good options there. I'll stop here because I think I've demonstrated kind of what my idea of the bobbleheads is. Next turn we use, you know, strength to start growing Iron Man, make Iron Man a threat. Charisma can make tokens. Right now, tokens become a threat. You can start to see where all these bobbleheads can factor into a big strategy. But I think you can kind of see what the goal is there on what I'm trying to do. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with that Mechanaut, Agility bobblehead, so that's the unblockable 1, Buried Ruin, so 4-lander, and then Saheeli the Sun's Brilliance that can pay 2 to tap to make a token that's a copy of another creature or artifact you control until end of turn. This is nice, I think, for a couple different reasons. You could make a copy of a bobblehead, you could make a copy of another artifact creature, you could obviously make a copy of a lot of things in the deck, but I kind of like it for the bobbleheads, kind of bolstering you another bobblehead during that turn to get at that big effect. So turn 1, I think we just put the bridge in tapped. It's got to come in tapped, and I don't really see any other better option here. Turn 1. Turn 2, I think we go Mechanaut into the Manifold Key since we can play it for free. Again, I think the goal there is to set the Manifold Key up for a future turn where we can use it to play to use it for Iron Man. But I think here we can just go Vessel into Agility bobblehead. Again, getting some artifacts set up. The Vessel's just 1 and the bobblehead's just 2 because of that Mechanaut. So you can see we're starting to get our artifacts down. Turn 4 is the turn we should be able to for sure get Iron Man down since it's only 4. So play the Epiphany and tap, scry 1 for our Treasure Vault, another way to make some treasures, and then we'll get Iron Man down, having just 1 mana open with the Thought Vessel, I believe. But we'll go to combat, get that treasure, and I think we'll sack the Manifold Key. And again, I want something like that Ichor Wellspring to draw me some cards, get some more value in my hand, and again, when it enters, it's going to draw me a card. Played the Epiphany for turn, but that's a-okay. We'll move into the next one. Mirrorworks is kind of a fun one. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield, we can pay 2 if we do make a copy of it. Because those bobbleheads aren't legendary, right? Here's a great way to make copies of the bobbleheads, and it's actually something we can do this turn. We could play Mirrorworks for 4. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 2, 3, 4 mana left, right? We could even put Saheeli down, right, if we want to. But go to combat, make the treasure, sack the Wellspring, right? We can now make a copy of the bobblehead when it comes in. I guess in this case, we'll go get the bobblehead that grows. We'll get the bobblehead that grows Iron Man. And then, right, we get to we're going to pay the 2 to make a copy of it. So now you can see we have 3 bobbleheads now. That means 3 counters on Iron Man, but remember we can do it twice because we have 2 of the bobbleheads. We could also potentially do it 3 times if we had enough mana with Saheeli, right? With the once we stack up our mana, but again, now Iron Man could potentially become a Voltron threat for our opponents. We'll draw for turn. Now, what we could do there, if we want to be cheeky, is we'll be on tap. We could sack the the Buried Ruin to put Ichor Wellspring back on top, which I actually think might, or it's back to your hands, right? That might make some sense because then on this turn, actually, I think I was already up. I think I accidentally put the counter to 1 too many, but that's okay. Because then on this turn, we could put the Ichor Wellspring down, pay for just 1, pay 2 with the Mirrorworks to make a copy of it, right? That's going to draw us 2 cards. But now, right, we can sacrifice 2. Right now, we have 2 of them to sacrifice, right, for the purposes of getting more bobbleheads. That was 1, and then 2. So we've got 5 mana left. 2 of it for Charisma bobblehead. But let me think about this. Or we could use 5 mana left. We would want 2 of it to copy a bobblehead. So we've got 3 mana to spare. Maybe now's the time we use that Strength bobblehead. Put a couple counters on Iron Man. Move the combat, right, attack, sack the token Wellspring, right, because then that way we're not losing the regular one, just in case we want to, copy it with Saheeli, right, because now we could copy it with Saheeli and then sacrifice it with Iron Man, right, to make sure that we're keeping it on board, right. I think that's another way where this kind of thing works. We'll get the intelligence one, and then, like I said, we'll pay 2 to make a copy of it. So now we're up to 5 bobbleheads, and you could see that the train start to move here. I think we'll stop here because I think you can kind of see what the deck's trying to do now. Again, make the bobbleheads, copy the bobbleheads, get more bobbleheads, get the big time effects. I think we can grow Iron Man to be a real threat to our opponents. This can draw us cards, right? If we need the cards, they're blockable, right? Making Agility bobblehead can make it unblockable, right? We saw those bobbleheads and what they can do. And I think that's where this deck can really shine, making copies of a thing like the duplicator or the mirror works. Again, work towards the combo. If we can't work towards the combo, just work towards the bobbleheads, work towards um, Iron Man, or even if it's not Iron Man, just put other creatures to be threats. Grow other creatures at the same time. Maybe you take a turn with the multiple bobbleheads to grow multiple creatures. There's lots of options we can take, and I think that what makes the deck interesting is how much room you have to play in artifacts to make it a good time. But that's what I have for you for Iron Man. Let me know what you think, and I will catch you guys next time.